You are listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
Riley shadows of his goalpost. Back to pass with time. And it is caught, and this is gone. Darrell Walker, 101-yard touchdown.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. That's gotta hurt. Everybody knows we're previewing the Edmonton Eskimos, and the first thing that they hear tuning into this episode is Mike Riley to Darrell Walker. That's still gotta hurt. It's the Rouge Radio Podcast, episode 375, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. My name is Robert Dalton, and joining me from Alberta, it's not Tony. We go to Edmonton, and it's not Joseph Q. Belineski. We go directly to the Turf District, one of the co-hosts of the Eskimo Empire Podcast, Mr. Andrew Hoskins. Andrew, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I, of course, with that intro, I don't know how excited I am anymore, but at least we can talk about what is to come this season. And hey, every time you guys do 9 teams in 9 weeks, I'm always excited to listen and always happy if you let me be a part. So thanks again.
I'm excited for doing it. Just the 9 teams, it just tells us that we're that much closer to the regular season. So
exactly, it's ramping up. I love it. Yeah.
So now that we got the cheesy introductory out of the way, how's life been? You still doing the weekly podcast? I know you're still recording, but it just shows you that I don't listen on a frequently basis, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, geez, I tell you, here I don't listen, but how's your show? Yeah, no, it's no, you know what? It's been going really well. We do every second week in the off season, and then we'll be kicking it into weekly here in about 3 weeks. As camps open up, hopefully, and then we can get back into chatting football every week. But we've been having a really good time. Kayla has been back at school, so we haven't had her here as much, which is unfortunate. But we've been lucky to have guys like Eddie Steele came and joined us last week, and we had a really great chat. And we've been able to talk to some of the new guys on the phone, like Trevor Harris and AJ Gass. So it's pretty exciting that we're starting to kind of have those off-season chats and still get to kind of get our football fix in. And of course, we're all ramped up to actually start talking about games in a few weeks and evaluating players. So and of course, starting this week with the draft. So that's the cue that we're almost there.
Speaking of the draft here, because we brought you on, and obviously Tony's MIA, so Andrew has graciously agreed to be my temporarily co-host for the day.
Perfect.
So this is gonna be. I feel bad for the previous guest, right? Because I feel bad for Josh, I feel bad for Cliff, and then Mike Hogan when we had him. We only had him on for 20 minutes, and then here's Andrew. Oh, we got to have him on for a whole show.
I'm not sure if we should feel bad for the other guests or for the people who have to listen to this.
But, well, it's funny because we had this planned out every week, and I, instead of asking everybody all at once, I just decided, okay, let's DM people just before the previous show, and then at least we can give them. At least, because at our age we kind of forget, right? So at least give them enough notice.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So it's all good and fun here, but no, it's just it's glad to have you on the show, and but I did tell my daughter, and again, as is the case, I'm like, she's asking, hey, who are you gonna have on the show? Andrew. Oh, from Edmonton? Yeah, great dad jokes.
Yeah, you know what though? I have one really, really good one. So I saved. I didn't pile a whole bunch together, but I got one really good one, and I'll save that for the end.
I don't know if you paid attention to my Twitter feed on around Christmas. My wife bought me the Loser Laugh card game, which is just filled with dad jokes. Yes. It is awesome. I've actually used some at the end of our show. And
it's outstanding.
Yeah, it's.
I believe I retweeted most of them, so yes, I was following.
There we go. So let's go about the topic of hand here, because you're talking about the draft. We're recording this May 1st. Insert Justin Timberlake meme if you are one of those people that are not sick of it yet. Tomorrow's May 2nd. The Edmonton Eskimos pick, I believe, second overall? Or third overall. Third overall, yeah. So third overall, the Edmonton Eskimos are on the clock. Where do you see Brock Sunderland going with that pick? Because usually it's either offensive line or best player available, which is usually a star-studded position like a receiver. But you being close to Brock Sunderland, and you've had him on your show, where do you see Mr. Sunderland picking with that third overall pick?
Well, there's a couple of spots that I can see. There's definitely a shot that he will try and pick up a DB, which he has even last year, picking up Godfrey Onyeka, and I believe it was 6th overall. I believe so. And so there is a tendency in the last few years that they've gone for a few DBs, Onyeka and Jordan Below last year. So, or Beaulieu, I better say that correctly. I think there is a couple of decent DBs in this draft, so I could see that he may look that way. He may also look at a receiver, like you said, just because now with Tavon Smith coming back to play here, this is going to be his first year after he was drafted in 2017. So it'll be exciting to see him kind of take over that role, but now you need that next guy to groom. And of course we have Anthony Parker that we signed in the off season, so we could be even starting 2 Canadian receivers. So there may be maybe even more of a push to go towards one of those star receivers that are out there. Last on the list, and again, this is going to base on what they have on their board as far as best player available, because that is definitely how Brock drafts. If there is an offensive lineman that's there that they think they need to snag early, then they might do that, but I have a feeling that'll be more in the second round, where I believe we have the 12th overall. I think they might go for a offensive lineman at that point.
Not to fact check you here, Andrew, but Godfrey Onyeka, 10th overall.
Yes.
First overall,
10th overall. Okay.
Yeah, first in the second round. So it's somewhat close. In a 9-team league, you're really not that far off from 6th from 10th.
Well, it was their first pick. Yeah. It was their first pick last year. I remember that. So I gotta. But yes, it was 10th overall. You're right. Yeah.
Are you guys having a draft party?
Actually, Kayla and I last year we got invited to be in the media suite at Commonwealth as the draft was on, and then we were able to talk to Brock after he made the first pick, and then we were able to talk to Godfrey Onyeka on the phone right after. And so Kayla and I are back at Commonwealth tomorrow night to be in the media suite during the draft, which is kind of nice because we get the opportunity then to talk to the other guys like Morley and Dave, who we've had on our show lots. And then kind of catch up with those draft picks right afterwards. I mean, on the phone, but still get a chance to kind of get to know them a little bit. And it's just exciting to kind of be there and be focused and watching the whole draft and talking about who goes where. So that's our plan for tomorrow night.
I got to admit, when you started off that story in regarding to you and Kayla last year, I thought it was going to be like a punchline. We're like, last year they invited us. This year, not so much. They only wanted Mike.
Well, they really do want just Mike, but for some reason they let us in. I'm not really sure how it works, but I'll take it. Yeah.
So before we get to the players, right, because there's a lot to talk about with this team.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. Jason Moss. Is he short leash? I mean, I hate to ask that question because, obviously everybody is going to focus on, his quote-unquote tantrums and the fact that they missed the playoffs this year. But he took over a Grey Cup winning team in 2016, and in the next year after that, he owns a record of 2-2 in the playoffs, and then making it to the East and Western Division final. So there's that going for him. But with the tantrums, and I shouldn't say tantrums, but with his anger issues on the sidelines, well documented. Should he be on a short leash, and as well as is he on a short leash?
I don't think so. Now, here's my reasoning for it, and I know everybody points, and heck, we joke about it on our show still about, well, be careful, you look kind of like a Gatorade bottle. Like, you just never really know what might happen. But the fact of the matter is, in the second half of the season last year, he really toned it down. And I think he's learning his lessons. He was a rookie head coach, and he always played with fire. He always coached with that fire and that passion. And I think he's learning how to reel that in and use it when it's appropriate instead of using it all the time. But I do think that he needed to come in and set a tone early, which he did. And to some degree, obviously went over the top a bit on the sidelines, which is what people were seeing. So, but I believe he got called out on it enough. And then I know he went on to the show here with Morley and said, this starts with me. And that was about the beginning of August. And right after that, we didn't have another blow up, right through the end of the season. So, I think the lessons are learned. So I really do think Brock believes in Jason, and I believe that the team would run through a wall for Jason. So I don't think he's on a short leash. I think he has this year to really show what he can do. And I think if it goes the same way this year, then next year they would be a short leash. But I think he's pretty safe this year.
Every year, and people want your opinion on this one. This is what everybody tuned in for. No, not dad jokes. This is what everybody tuned in here for. Every year, a big player goes to another team through free agency or trade, but it's very rare where a star quarterback goes somewhere. So from 2013 to last year, how are Eskimo fans going to deal for, come home opener where for the first time in so many years, the guy taking snaps under center is not number 13 with the last name Riley?
Oh, there's no doubt that it's going to be tough. I think a lot of Eskimo fans had prepared for it, being that the rumblings kind of started that he was going to BC last offseason, and it started to make sense. You want to be closer to your family. You know, there was obviously the connection with Ed Hervey. There was the fact that he had played in BC before. We had all hoped that, loyalty would win out and he would stay here and be part of a long-term legacy here in Edmonton. But I don't blame the guy. You take where the biggest paycheck is, and if it means you don't have to go very far to be around your family, well, yeah, it's a pretty easy idea. And I really think that was one of the deciding factors for him, was something that Brock couldn't offer, which is location. Edmonton is just that much farther away. There's really not much we can do about that. So it's tough. I hate to see Mike go. Amazing leader, amazing quarterback. I guess the one thing that I will say is right now, at least it seems in the Empire, that there's a lot of us that have a lot of hope because of all the work that Brock did on free agency day and bringing in a high level of talent. And there's no way he's going to automatically replace Mike Riley, but bringing in some great talents. Now I think there's a lot of hope, but there's also that, well, let's wait and see. Let's see what they're like when they're on the field before we start jumping all over whoever the quarterback is, or before we start jumping over, hey, this team is a wreck. why don't we just watch and see what happens? Because there was a lot of talent brought in to challenge, and hopefully they can take over that role and kind of lead by committee instead of just by one guy.
So I'm glad you mentioned the new guys coming in, because you wouldn't find a bigger fan of what Brock Sutherland did during free agency more than me. But it really was out of necessity, because I don't think there has been a team in recent memory that had the handful of guys that left either through free agency. You had guys going to the NFL. You had guys go. I think maybe one went to the AFL, but I could be mistaken on that one. But you had all that happening. But the one thing I want to get your thought of here, because they replaced the bodies. But in 2018, the Eskimos missed the playoffs with Mike Riley, with Duke Williams, with Bryant Mitchell, with Aaron Grimes. The list goes on, and we're replacing those guys with decent talent. Probably wouldn't put them on the same level as those guys that are out. So as the leader voice, outside of Dave Campbell, of Eskimo Nation, I mean, explain to us from outside of Edmonton, is that why should we be excited for this team going into the 2019 season?
Okay, so there's two things that I would say there. First, you're absolutely right about Dave Campbell being the voice of everything, because I would never disagree with you on that. But what I would say is first, you are correct. On the offensive side of the ball, we lost massive talent. When you look at Darrell Walker, Duke Williams, Bryant Mitchell, of course Mike Riley, all leaving. That's your all your A gamers. We have Kenny Stafford still, which is great, but that's all of your kind of A gamers going away. What they did replace with is Trevor Harris, which is, I will absolutely admit to anyone listening that is a drop from Mike Riley, but it's not as significant a drop as it could have been. That's my one thing I will say there. Your receivers that are now coming in, we bring in DeVaris Daniels. We bring in Tavon Smith, who has NFL pedigree, but is now going to be playing up here and is a Canadian, which helps with ratio side of things. The big one for me is we bring in Servi. So now we actually have extra protection. It's because one of the things that has plagued Mike Riley over the last 2 years is he's had no protection. And a lot of times it's hut and run for your life. So I'm excited to have that here where Sir Vincent Rogers is definitely going to help to lock down that offensive line, which gives the quarterback more time, which really suits Moss's system a bit better. So as a whole, I believe the offense isn't as on paper powerful as it was before. Where I think we need to be excited is on the defensive side of the ball, because there's no argument from last year that the defense struggled. They had good games, but when it counted, not really. And a lot of that was scheme. A lot of it was playing a very soft zone, which drove us all to drink heavily. But it was, but we had a lot of that last year, and we had a lot of guys that were either playing hurt or playing out of position. And
Chris Edwards.
He got better as the season went on. I will give him credit. He did get better as he was just penalty filled at the beginning of this season, but he did get better as the season went on. But the one that, I look at that where Brock brought in there, starting with re-signing Kwaku Boateng, which was huge. To get a monster like that on the line, who's only coming into his third year and just learning every year. I mean, that's enormous. But then you look at all those additions and Larry Dean and Don Unamba, and building into the secondary with Arjun Colhoun and Anthony Orange. And now all of a sudden we have guys that know how to play aggressive football, and now they're going to be under a defensive coordinator that knows how to play aggressive defense. I think that is where the big improvement is going to be. I think at this particular moment that it means the Eskimos are better than they were last year? Not really. I think they're probably going to end up right about the same place that they did as far as a record, but I think that they will make the playoffs this year as compared to not make the playoffs. And if that defense starts to play how I'm hoping that they will be able to play, I think that could be even significantly better. The last thing that I'll add in that's exciting is AJ Gass coming in to run special teams. That means special teams will actually also be aggressive, which we haven't had in, I can't even count how many years. We've had no real attack on special teams. So to me, that's an exciting add as well. So I think there's enough there. I wouldn't argue with anybody that said that our offense takes a little bit of a step back, but I definitely would say that I would expect our defense to be that much better, and so I think that's where the excitement comes from.
Definitely. You mentioned AJ Gass, former linebacker. Another former linebacker, J.C. Sherritt, announced his retirement. Not only did he announce his retirement, I think a couple days later he announced that he was going to join the Calgary Stampeders coaching ranks. How did that go over with all the fans? Because to me, it's just kind of the equivalent of, Milt Stegall retiring and going to work for the Riders, or Orlando Steinhauer just going to the Argos, which he's done, which I guess is a bad example, Dalts, bad example. So how did you guys take it? I mean, there wasn't a lot of outrage on Twitter as I kind of expected it, but there were some people that were somewhat salty about it. But the general consensus is that they're happy for him. They just wish it was with a better team, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is we're all happy for JC, and fact of the matter is this is the new coach's cap era, and we had already filled all of our coaching spaces, and then JC announced his retirement. Well, we didn't have a space for him. As it turned out, then things changed down in Calgary and they had a spot for him. So all the best to him. I mean, I wish it wasn't with Calgary. I mean, like you said, that's, although if I had to pick at this particular moment, at least it's Calgary and not like another coach of ours going to the Riders, because I might actually lose my mind if that happens. So going to Calgary, hey, I can't really blame him. And hopefully one day there is a spot that he can come back here and help us out here. And I'll be interested to see how he does as a linebacker coach.
One thing that you'll probably know is, like, one of the things that we do when we do our 9 teams in 9 weeks, we go through each team's records last year, and we even go down to the points for and the points against. And sometimes, like, you knew Edmonton had a mediocre season, but you didn't really know how bad until you start looking at the record. 2-7 on the road. How explain that to me. For a team that goes 7-2 at home, you kind of think, okay, well, if you even lose 1 or 2 less than you win, you're playoff ready. So obviously that's the difference between that and, the result between a playoff appearance. Why such an abysmal record on the road?
I wish I had an answer for that, because every time I watched them on the road, it was just a lot of fire truckers at my house. I just didn't get it. I don't know if it was just a matter of they couldn't seem to gel properly on the road, or if it was just like they fed off the energy in Commonwealth, but then when they didn't have it, they just didn't really know how to do what they needed to do. And we always seem to see too, like that those defensive breakdowns just killed us on the road last year, especially in the fourth quarter, where we'd have the lead at halftime and we'd be like, okay, well, this is going okay, and then the second half the offense just stops playing and the defense disappears, and oh, look at that, we lose again. So there was like that question came up quite a bit last year, where it was like, is it the halftime adjustments on the road that are a bit of an issue? So again, that'll be something we'll have to watch this year. With Lolly having so much more experience in football, I hope that the changes at halftime are better, and it's not like, hey, we just keep doing the same thing. So I'm hoping for that, but I can't really explain what it was. It was just like they would get up and get started at the beginning of the game, and then they just disappear. And I know the second half of the season, as much as I'm ragging on the defense, the offense also just went into the tank especially those last 6 games. It was like they just couldn't put a point on the board. And even if the defense played well, you can't win a game unless you put some points on the board. So hopefully it'll be a bit better. I mean, I'll take a 7-2 record at home. I obviously want a 9-0 record at home, but so at least we get to cheer when they're here. But yeah, and then on the road they don't hear me in the stands, so I guess that's all right too.
You mentioned that it would be nice if your offense could put a point and maybe result in a win or two. That was the Riders' recipe for success last year. I can't imagine that's going to equate for that's not going to be duplicated this year. You mentioned halftime adjustments, and this is like the weirdest segue that I've ever done, because I wanted to talk about the management and Len Rhodes, because you've had all my Twitter, like all my knowledge of the Eskimo management is based off Twitter. I don't read news stories or what have you, but I know that Len Rhodes was accessible. That made everybody a lot happier, especially in the media. But I think a lot of people got kind of really upset over the fact that the perception that Len Rhodes cared more about halftime entertainment than winning, and this goes all the way back to the Ed Hervey firing a couple of years ago. So the question is that in my opinion, I think whatever happens in the office is really not going to affect. But do you kind of foresee that now that Len Rhodes is gone, that might see some new Eskimo fans showing up at Commonwealth on game day?
Well, I hope so. I think.
Well, we all hope so. Yeah.
I think it will. I think there are some people who solely were going away from it. And fact of the matter is Len made a mistake. Now almost 4 years ago when he let Ed Hervey go. Where he made the mistake is in his press conference afterwards. It's a small thing, right? But what he said was, winning isn't everything, and everybody took him to task for it. Where all it needed to be said was, winning isn't the only thing, and that changes the entire tone of that particular sentence. But I myself never had an issue with Len. I met the man a number of times. We had him on the podcast a couple of times. He reached out to me when I had my accident and sent me the Eskimo book for my recovery so that I could, and he put a little note in that for me, and he every time he saw me, he was very kind to me. He knew who I was. He treated myself and my wife with respect. So I never really had a problem with Len. What I can see though is that sometimes when he would get in front of the mic, some of the things he would say would end up, going crazy on Twitter. And I can see where, we're worrying about the halftime shows and all those things. I mean, that's one thing, and it's great to have, but that wasn't going to change the whole thing and bring more people out to a game. It may bring some more people out to that game, but it's not going to bring people out to more games. And it's the other things that he did put into place that people are kind of overlooking, things like tailgating that has been growing every year. Now that's starting to bring more people to more games because they want to be part of the tailgating and then go into the game. And they need to find more of those types of things. And I'm hoping that whoever the new president is, I know I've talked to some of the guys that are on the board, and just said, like, in this day and age, what we need is experiences. If you look at what the Ottawa Red Blacks do with their fans, buy a ticket and travel with the team to an away game, come down onto the field after the game and if you're a season ticket holder and see the guys, and like all those types of things that are experiences. That's how you're going to pull more people to want to be in the stadium, to see these guys, give them the connection to the guys, and give them the ability to have that experience that they're going to talk about with more people. That gets more people to a game, and I'm hoping that whoever the new president is will do something like that, and then we'll see more people filling into a Commonwealth.
Everybody on Twitter has had our fun making fun of Kavis Reed over in Montreal. There was a news story about a month ago that there was a possibility of Kavis Reed becoming the new CEO, replacing Len Rhodes in Edmonton. Any truth? I mean, obviously the season's closing in, so hopefully at CBA pending.
Yes.
That kind of movement is not going to happen, but I just want to get your opinion on that, because obviously, again, it's away from on the field product. Kavis Reed, CEO, is Eskimo Eskimos. How's that going? Like, how would that happen, or how would that come off amongst all the fans in Edmonton?
Well, there'd probably be consequences in Edmonton.
Throws out the consequences.
But I'll never forget that. Again, I'm going to say, as a man, I am a big fan of Kavis Reed. When he was the head coach here, and I've told this story many times, but when he was the head coach here, we went to watch a practice right before the Labor Day game, and he brought me and my cousin and my kids onto the field, put us in the middle of the huddle at the end of the practice, talked to my kids. My daughter still remembers that, he remembered her name. He is a very, very great man, very nice man. Would I put him into a president position? No, I would not. And that is because I don't believe that when I'm looking at a president of the Eskimos, I want somebody who has some knowledge of marketing. I want to know somebody who has some knowledge of business and how to build successful business. And as much as I love Kavis Reed as a man, he hasn't had any of that experience. He was, I think, kind of thrown into a GM role that he's learning on the fly. This offseason, he hasn't done too bad, but is it going to be enough to change the whole thing? I doubt it, but I don't think he's had enough experience in the office world to say, yes, you could be a president. So that's, I guess, where I'd end up.
All right. We're talking to Andrew Askins from the Eskimo Empire Podcast. So I should say we're talking. He's co-hosting with me, and I'm just kind of just picking his brain here. The Eskimo Empire Podcast, and that goes back to one of the final questions I'll ask you here. The Eskimo name, and
I knew it was going there.
Yeah, the Eskimo name, and you can give me the most PC answer, and or if you just want to say no comment, that's completely up to you. But obviously things came out about a month ago about the potentially that, hey, it's not going to happen soon, but it'll inevitably happen. I want to get your thoughts on the Eskimo name, because it's a name that's been around for 100 years, at least as far as my knowledge is.
Yeah.
You could argue. Now, I'm not going to say is that if there is some kind of derogatory undertone or whatnot, but if you were given the choice, if you were president of the Eskimos, would you change it? And if you would, what name would you want to change it to? And you can't name it the Edmonton Andrews.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate, because that was right. I was thinking that. Edmonton Franklins? Can we call them that? No, probably not that either. Not if he's not here. It doesn't make much sense. Okay, so here's the thing. If I was the president, I would be doing what the team is doing and meeting with the people that this would affect the most. Me being a middle-class white guy, I really don't get a say in whether that actually is offensive or not, because that's not my. It's not offensive to me, but it is not aimed at me either. The biggest thing for me is, so 70 seasons they've had this name, and the one thing that I think that the team has always done. Now, there was a time maybe in the late 50s where they used it the improper way. But I think since the 70s, they've really done a good job of moving away from anything that is derogatory that goes along with it. So I really believe that as whoever the president is, they need to be meeting with the people that it would affect the most, and then make the change based on that, if that is the case. There'll be a lot of fans that will be upset, because we view it as a name of pride, a name of history, and a name that we kind of look at more as a positive power. But then the actual word in the past was used as derogatory. So I think, it is a really, really tough one. If I was going to rename the team, well, because I really like the name, I'd have a hard time renaming them. I get the whole push to go to Edmonton Empire, because there's really you can't really rag on the name Empire. There was also a story of them maybe possibly going to the Edmonton Elks, because they were that way back when they were actually funded by the Elk Club in the town. I don't, either way, it as a fan that has been watching for 30 years, 35 years, I'm really dating myself, 35 years, it's going to be difficult no matter what. And as somebody who hosts a podcast with that name, it's also going to be really costly for me, because I'm going to have to change everything myself. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that plays out. But I really, that's the best answer I can give.
The Empire Podcast. I guess there might be some kind of copyright infringement there. Well, I guess if you're using the Eskimo Empire, that's the thing. But
see, the thing is, I cleared that with them before. Like, is this okay? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, great. So it's but really, again, it's not really my choice. So if the decision is to change the name, the one thing I can guarantee is it's not going to mean I'm not going to games. It's not going to mean that I'm not going and cheering these guys on. It's not that I'm going to stop wearing green and gold. Of course, I'm going to be doing all of those things and still be an avid fan of this team. And it just means that we just have to, adjust to whatever that is and learn what the next thing is. But I just hope that if they do change it, that they do keep in mind that our history is still as the Eskimos, and although we change the team name now, it doesn't mean that we forget our history, because the history is very powerful, and it was a very powerful team.
Well said, and I appreciate the politically correctness response with a little bit more information and forward. I was kind of like, maybe it would be the Edmonton Section O's. Haven't heard from that guy in a while. I don't know what he's doing.
Do we? No, I don't know if I'd really vote for that one. I hope I get a vote.
How about the Edmonton Beleneskis?
Well, I know one fan that would be over the moon with that. Yeah.
he just sent me a message saying he can't make a guest spot today. So I sent him. You were tagged in there. I said, hey, get this tweet to retweet it 100 times, and you come on for 100.
Yes.
Come on for 5 minutes.
I saw that.
He got 7, and I felt bad, and I said, "Hey, what's your Skype ID? We'll come on." And he says, "No, I'm just joshing with you. You got to do what you got to do and whatnot." And
poor Joe.
Yeah.
He'll be on our show again before long. It's all right.
Yeah, I had him on Facebook, and I posted a picture of my daughter, and he says, "That daughter's going to get a guest spot on the podcast before I do, isn't she?"
He's not wrong.
Technically, she already did. I recorded. It was just like when she was born. This was like 2016, and if I could actually go back and get them, this is back when we were recording in a different room, and you could hear freshly new Emma crying up a storm at 10:30 at night. And you could. It's not like it wasn't distracting to the listener, but it was distracting to me as a podcaster because I knew that no one else could hear it unless you were like really focusing on it. But me as a father, as a new father, well, I shouldn't say new father, but a father of a newborn, you just are like, oh my God, I so want to go up there and console her, but at the same time, I want to talk some football.
Exactly. I've had my older son on, and that was actually where the birth of "You Can't Catch Footballs with Your Face" came from. So, so he gets a shout out on every podcast. So yeah, that's the thing when you do this. You're a dad too. You want to talk football, but hey, if you can talk football and to your kid at the same time, bonus.
Yeah, that's I have to be wary about what I say because my oldest daughter listens to the podcast sometimes, so she's a little bit more innocent. So when I let loose of a 4-letter word, she lets me hear it. She definitely lets me hear it. So let's get to previewing the Edmonton Eskimos. Last year they were 9-9, 7-2 at home, and as we said earlier, 2-7 on the road. 482 points for, 471 points against. Gone are Nate Behar. I like how I noted Nate as the first.
That's a good start.
Nate Behar, Mike Riley, Duke Williams, Bryant Mitchell, Aaron Grimes, and some guy named Darrell Walker. He bypassed Winnipeg to go to Toronto, so I'm a little bit salty about that. In are Trevor Harris, Greg Ellenson, Sir Vincent Rogers, Tavares Daniels, and Ricky Collins, to name a few. And I could go on and on. There was a lot of moves, but we're running out of time. Andrew, where do you see the Eskimos finishing the 2019 season? I know you said that maybe perhaps that they would finish with a similar record, but you predicted them with the playoffs. Give a little bit more insight on that one.
Okay, so I think that the defense is that much better this year. I think the offense probably stays about the same point percentage, but I'm hoping more consistent throughout the entire season. Because one thing that we did see last year was lots of points in some games and almost none in others. And I'm hoping there's some consistency this year with this particular offense. So between that and then the defense improving, and hopefully the special teams actually getting us some field position, which would be a miracle. But I have faith that is going to happen this year. I am going to go giving the Eskimos still a record of 9-9, but I do believe that they make it into the playoffs with that record because last year was the first time a team with a 9-9 record did not make the playoffs.
Are you that close from making a comment about the CFL playoff format?
No, it was, I was not actually, I was just stating a fact, that's all. But I do think that, let's face it, the other teams in the West, BC, they got Mike Riley. They improved leaps and bounds just on that alone. Calgary stayed very consistent, although they've taken some losses on the defense. I'm never going to count them out because every time I do that, they just shove it down my throat, so I'm not bothering to do that. And Winnipeg, out of every team in the CFL, kept the most consistent And I think that plays a huge role in this league. So, and what Saskatchewan did was not a lot. So I think right now we're looking at Edmonton being in third or fourth. And unless once I see them on the field together, maybe my opinion changes. But because, as you said, there were so many changes, I just need to say, okay, well, the offense is a little not as good as it was last year. The defense is going to be better than it was last year. So let's call it even, and that's where we end up with 9-9.
You know what? I like the way that you're thinking. I'm looking at the schedule. That it's an 18-game schedule, obviously through 21 weeks. They have a bye in week 4, and I think, as much as we say that it's a marathon, not a sprint, I think this season is make or break within the first 5 weeks. If you look at their schedule, they host Montreal in week 1. I think that's a gimme.
Yep.
In my opinion. Then they have...
Should be. Especially when they're celebrating Fred Stamps and they have all these things going on. Like, God, they got to win that one, right?
Yeah. Then they've got BC at home the week after that. They visit Winnipeg the week after that. They're on the bye, and then they go into BC. Those are three out of those 4 are teams that finish ahead of you in the standings, in my opinion. So I think that's the make it or break it. And I think what you said, and you put out other teams as an example, specifically Winnipeg, continuity and consistency breeds success sometimes, obviously if you do it correctly. With all the turnover, starting over the season, other than Montreal, I don't know if that amount of turnover is going to result in anything but a 1-3 start. And in the West, I mean, and it very well could turn out to be completely complete like heaven for Eskimo fans, because there might be an injury to Matt Nichols, there might be an injury to Bo Levi Mitchell, there an injury to Zach. Well, Kolaros is always injured. There might be something with BC, right? So I mean, there's a lot of what ifs, right? And that's why they play the games. But if everybody's healthy, and I look at this record right now and the way that the Western Division is built, the Edmonton Eskimos, in my opinion, starting off with a 1-3 record, pretty much puts them in the backseat that no matter what they do for the remaining part of the season, I think they're on the outside looking in. I do like where you're going with, and I think that they will be much improved on the defensive side, especially with the linebacking crew that they added. Don Unamba, Larry Dean, Javon Santos-Knox. That's a I honestly, God, I guarantee, book it. 2 out of those 3 linebackers will be Western All-Stars next year. Book it on this show.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I'll take it.
And I'll say the other 3 would be Adam Bighill. So everybody who gets a vote will figure out who's going to be that second or third. It'll be one of those 3 in Edmonton wearing green and gold. Having said that, the drop-off from Riley, Williams, Mitchell, Walker to Trevor Harris, although it's not a steep one, it's still a drop-off nonetheless. And I think that's where everybody knows. I mean, Trevor Harris went to the Grey Cup last year, but it was through the East. And the knock on him is that he slows down to, at least in my opinion, he slows down as the season progresses. And in the West, especially when they're going to be starting 1-3, they'll need the guy that stepped in for Ricky Ray back in 2015, and that's a long time ago. That's 4 years ago. 4 or 5 seasons ago. Can't do the math quickly.
The guy that stepped in for Ricky Ray was Stephen Giles. So,
I'm talking about in Toronto.
Let's make sure we clear that up.
Well, I'm talking about in Toronto.
Oh, you're talking Toronto.
Trevor Harris stepping
in.
Yeah, I'm not talking about his days with Edmonton. But that's a long time ago. And to be honest with you, with the turnover, with the knock on Trevor Harris, and the start on the schedule, I like this Edmonton team. There's not a lot of blemishes. I think Brock Sutherland did a tremendous job. It's just that when you do things out of necessity, sometimes you kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball sometimes. So I like Edmonton at home. A lot of their games, based on the start of the schedule. I think I'm predicting a little bit of a step back. If they're 500, that's great, but I do see an 8-10 record specifically because of the way that their schedule is ran up, and they're in a tough Western Division. So I welcome all Eskimo fans hate mail. You can send them to the New Rouge at gmail.com. You could tweet us at Rouge Radio on Twitter. And of course, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rouge Radio. And if you know what, Tony's sending me a message right now. He says that Mike Riley is going to destroy every game that he plays Edmonton, and he is going to predict a 3-15 season. So you can, I'm joking about that. I'm joking about that. But he's thinking it. He's thinking it.
I know he is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you can tweet at Tony at Tony Rouge, myself at Rouge Dalts if you care to, whatever. My tweets are open. My DMs are open too. Joe knows that, by the way.
Nice.
You can catch my temporary co-host, Andrew Oskins, from the Eskimo Empire Podcast at Freepalicious. Thank you, Andrew, for coming on the show. Next week, We'll have Brian Warishin, the co-host of the BC Lions Den podcast, as we preview the BC Lions going into the 2019 season. That will be great. The show is sponsored by SeatGiant.ca. Make sure to enter the promo code Rouge when you're getting tickets to sporting events or even concerts. Hey, you know what? If Michael Bublé comes into town and you're in Edmonton, enter the promo code Rouge at cgiant.ca. It's in Canadian funds. Don't have to pay the third-party charges. Goes directly to, well, not directly to us, but we get a cut over that. So please use our promo code Rouge. And I'm sure that Andrew hates it because the Eskimo Empire Podcast have their own. I'll let you plug your Sea Giant merchandise too, I believe.
Oh, well, that's good. We're on your show, dude. I'll do that when I'm on mine. It's all fine.
All right. Okay. So as we always do on this show, we end it with a dad joke. So I'll let you start yours.
All right, then. Well, mine would be dedicated to our good friends at the Alouettes flight deck. Do you know what you would call a French sandal?
Cavis Reed?
Philippe Flop.
I like mine better, by the way.
Okay, all right, I'm ready.
No, I meant the answer, the Cavis Reed answer.
Oh, Cavis Reed is great too. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure Cliff likes that one better, but still. Yeah.
Today, my son asked, "Can I have a bookmark?" And I burst into tears. 11 years old, and she still doesn't know that my name is Rob.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty good. Pretty good.
Do you got another one?
I didn't have another one loaded. I told you, I just went with one. It was so classic.
All right, so I'll end the podcast with this one here. My wife is really mad at the fact that I have no sense of direction, so I packed up my stuff and write.
Nicely done.
There we go. The show cannot cannot end unless there's some kind of soft laughter. For Tony, for Tony and Andrew, I'm Dalts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.